Wrestlebread podcast, bringing you the latest news, recaps, and analysis of AEW and WWE. Get the unique perspective from a wrestling fan of over 25 years. Here's your host, Jaydee.
What's going on, guys? This is Jaydee, and this is episode 100. I can't believe that it is episode 100. That it has been 100 episodes that we have been doing this. I am live on YouTube. I'm also live on Mixler as well. So if you're listening live on Mixler, you can hop over to YouTube, or if you're listening the day after, you can go to the YouTube channel and you can check out the live stream too. I was streaming just a little bit live on YouTube just to make sure that I got all the little, things, all little technical difficulties out. But yeah, here it is. We had Elimination Chamber. We had a really Raw. We are on the road to WrestleMania, guys. And WrestleMania 37 will be taking place on Saturday night and Sunday night. This year we're going to have fans, so we're going to be hearing people cheering and booing for whatever. And, darn, where are they? Let me start off with, oh my gosh, where's my sunglasses? I meant to put on my sunglasses because we got, as you see here, a new champ. The future is bright now. We have an A-lister for champion now. And I know people are, upset about it, that your pick didn't win or anything, but we always talk about how we want something new, and we got something new. We have a new champion, and I'll be going through everything that has happened with the Elimination Chamber. I did not check out the pre-show. We heard earlier that day that Keith Lee was taken out of the U.S. Championship match due to injury. And, I'm really hoping that something like this isn't going to hurt him. It just feels like he is not, favored on the main roster from them changing up his music and his gear and changing up his moveset as well. The things that we knew and loved about Keith Lee has been taken away. And unfortunately, the casuals who don't really know who Keith Lee is from the NXT days probably just looks at him as another big guy. And I'm hoping that WWE won't use this as sort of a reason as to why not to give him that big of a push. Because he definitely deserves a push. But it just feels like with him on the main roster, he's just been like there. I mean, he definitely got that almost a title shot when he came up to the main roster, but it feels like nothing else came from that. So because Keith Lee is out of the Fatal 4-Way match, not the triple threat match, we had a Fatal 4-Way on the pre-show, which I didn't check out. We had Elias, Mustafa Ali, we had, oh my gosh, I forgot who the first person was, but we also had John Morrison as well. And John Morrison came out victorious, so the triple threat match later on that night had featured Riddle, Bobby Lashley, and John Morrison. So starting off with the Elimination Chamber, we had the Smackdown version of the Elimination Chamber, and this Elimination Chamber was, of course, more high-flying. It was a lot of action going on than it was on Raw side. We had Damian Bryan and Cesaro starting out first. A lot of people were rooting for Cesaro. I had my pick of Damian Bryan. It really didn't matter who won the match because 10 times out of 10, they weren't going to beat Roman Reigns anyway. We all know that Roman Reigns is going to walk into WrestleMania as champion. So whoever, won the Elimination Chamber, they were going to get destroyed by the Tribal Chief anyway. However, I felt as though this Elimination Chamber was needed, kind of just show who the other contenders would be if Edge at the time were to choose Roman Reigns to defend his title at WrestleMania. We at least get to see hey, there are, 6 other people who could definitely get a title shot. I changed that. 5 other people, because we all know that Baron Corbin is not going to make it. So first off, we had Daniel Bryan and Cesaro starting off in the match. Of course, the 2 technical wrestlers definitely putting down a clinic. And it definitely started the match off a little bit slower, but because they will be in the Elimination Chamber for quite a while, they definitely needed to start the match off a little slower with technical moves to kind of get things slow before the momentum picks up with all the other competitors come in. Then Baron Corbin had came out afterwards. A lot of people really didn't know why Baron was in this match. I also don't know why Baron in this match. He definitely could have been replaced with Shinsuke Nakamura, definitely. Probably Big E, even though he is the Intercontinental Champion, you could put him in the match to kind of give the champion something to do. But after a while, Baron Corbin tapped out to the sharpshooter, which I'm a little surprised about. Even they had Daniel Bryan tap out to the sharpshooter as well. So I guess they're trying to bring back that the sharpshooter can really do something as far as submissions. And I'm saying that really remembering that Natalya also does the sharpshooter, but it's not... when Cesaro does the sharpshooter, it's more of just a move rather than an actual finisher that someone taps out to. Then towards the match, Sami Zayn comes out, and he didn't want to come out the pod. He was holding the door closed. I might be jumping around a little bit here because my notes was a little bit fumbled because I was just like typing away of everything that was going on. Sami Zayn was supposed to come out next, but he didn't want to come out. He was sitting there holding the door, trying to prevent Baron Corbin from getting to him. Now, he came out with his documentary crew. His documentary crew was kicked out from ringside, which actually confused me. The ref actually kicked out the documentary crew, but as we see later, almost didn't get kicked out when he walked down with AJ Styles. That part really didn't make any sense to me. But Sami Zayn was trying to hold the door closed, and that's when Cesaro got him from the other side. Then we had Kevin Owens, who came out next. Sami Zayn was trying to get Kevin Owens to team up with him, try to get that old school friendship that we always saw, and Kevin Owens just started wailing on Sami Zayn, hitting him through, pod after pod and everything. First of all, Cesaro's tights were an optical illusion. I don't know how many people's eyes was just like going crazy with his tights. We had Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn fighting, and then of course this leads to the last one who would come out of the chamber, which would be Jey Uso. Kevin Owens and Jey Uso started doing the hockey punches, of course, that Owens and Sami Zayn used to do. Then we also had Owens, who threw Jey Uso into a pod, and the back door breaks out. So I thought that maybe this would lead to somebody either interfering or something like that. And then, of course, we saw Kevin Owens doing a beautiful moonsault off the top of one of the pods as well. Then he started doing stunners to everyone, if I remember correctly. Then he did a stunner to Sami Zayn. 1, 2, 3, Sami Zayn is now eliminated. As they open the door for Sami Zayn to be eliminated, Kevin Owens was by the door. Jey Uso slams the door on Kevin Owens, gets his arm stuck in the door, and then he starts wailing him with super kicks. I love that spot. It was just showing a bit of the brutality that Jey Uso can have inside of him, because we always see whenever he comes out with Roman Reigns that he starts walking back and forth like a damn pit bull. But now we've seen that, he got a little bit of fire in him. So he was sitting there, I think he gave Kevin Owens like maybe 3 super kicks until he was able to get his arm out. And then there was a super kick. Then Jey Uso did a splash, and then Kevin Owens was eliminated, which I was a little surprised about. So now we're down to Jey Uso, Cesaro, and Daniel Bryan. Cesaro started to, earlier in the match, Cesaro was attacking Daniel Bryan, was really concentrating on one of his legs. I think it was the left leg. He picked up Daniel Bryan and started doing a one-legged swing, which really shows the type of strength that Cesaro has. And then early in the match, Sami Zayn and Cesaro was climbing up the cage, and Cesaro was able to kick Sami Zayn off, which was a very long drop, and then Cesaro did pull-ups at the top. I wished that there were fans there, because the fans would have popped like hell for that spot. I definitely, smiled for it. because he has a nice big following. I mean, we all remember the Cesaro section from, WrestleManias ago as well. Then Jey Uso did a super kick and a splash, and then he eliminates Cesaro. So now we're down to Daniel Bryan and Jey Uso. And I'm sure there were people out there who had thought of maybe there's a possibility that Jey Uso may win this match, and then the storyline of the Tribal Chief will get very interesting. I mentioned in the last episode, what if Jey Uso were to win? Will we get like the finger poke of doom or something like that? Or if Jey Uso going to really like take the chance of getting kicked out of the family just to get a shot at the title. After that, Jey Uso did a splash onto Daniel Bryan, and Daniel Bryan had kicked out of that. Then Jey Uso went to the top of one of the pods, and he did a splash off of Daniel Bryan, but Daniel Bryan put up his knees right on time, and it looked like he really didn't get the knees up in time, or it was just like a very weird angle when Jey Uso came down on Daniel Bryan's knees. Daniel Bryan, goes, he does the running knee, and 1, 2, 3, there's our winner of the Elimination Chamber. And like the last 5 minutes of this match, it really felt like watching Daniel Bryan from 2014. Like he had, like I was at the edge of my seat watching this Elimination Chamber. And like I had said, it was a lot of action. The people who are in this Elimination Chamber, it worked out. I guess we had Baron Corbin in there as sort of the person to kind of get eliminated first or something like that. But I think if Shinsuke Nakamura was in there instead of Baron Corbin, this Elimination Chamber match would probably be like a top 10 for a lot of people. But he was selling the left knee. And as, Daniel Bryan was laying down and, just recovering off of this match. And I didn't get a chance to look up the times for the Elimination Chamber match, but I think it was almost 45 minutes, this Elimination Chamber. But as he was sitting there, like, just recovering, and I thought, whoever wins, the Tribal Chief may be closer to the main event. I kind of figured that maybe the other Elimination Chamber match would be the main event or something, but no, out comes Roman Reigns, and I started cracking up. I felt so bad for Daniel Bryan because he didn't get a breather. He didn't get a breather at all. So the Elimination Chamber for the SmackDown side was for 35 minutes. But Daniel Bryan didn't get a breather, and I started cracking up because I was like, congratulations, Daniel Bryan. You won the Elimination Chamber. Now take this ass whooping from the Tribal Chief. But out comes the Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns, with Paul Heyman just staring a hole at this man's side of the face. He comes down, to introduce Daniel Bryan to the Island of Relevancy. And he goes for the spear, and Daniel Bryan counters it and does the yes lock, which, if the fans were there, that would have been a big pop. He had Roman Reigns in the yes lock. Roman Reigns powered out of it and then went and started wailing on Daniel Bryan. Just punch, 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 punch. Like very brutal with his punches. And then he paused. He looked up at the ref, started doing more vicious punches after that. And then he put Daniel Bryan in the guillotine. Daniel Bryan passes out. And that was the end. And it felt like, I said, that was a Goldberg match. That was a very dominant. That match lasts for a minute and a half. Actually, that was less than, Goldberg type of style. But that match lasted for a minute and a half. It did its point. And a lot of people were upset at what happened. That, it feels like the Elimination Chamber was a waste. Well, hold on. As Roman Reigns was about to celebrate, he turns, wham, spear by Edge. Edge stands over the Tribal Chief, points at the WrestleMania sign, the pyro goes off. And so the announcer said, well, Edge had made his choice. We are going to get Roman Reigns versus Edge at WrestleMania 37, spear versus spear. So this is how I feel about these two matches. I feel as though, was the Elimination Chamber match a bit of a waste? You can feel that way, but I feel as though this is all building towards how powerful the Tribal Chief is. we had 6 guys who, held it down for 30 minutes, showing their toughness and everything, especially Daniel Bryan, who came out, as the first one, who was out there first, held his own, he's the ultimate underdog. And then, Roman Reigns just eviscerates him. And it was all to show how powerful Roman Reigns is, just so when Edge comes in with the spear, that spear is just more devastating, because Roman Reigns sold it as well. And so I feel as though this all happened just to set up Roman Reigns and Edge, so that, Roman Reigns is this, so powerful and so vicious and everything. And then Edge just comes in and spear him. So I feel as though, like, Daniel Bryan was the right choice. I know there were a lot of people out there who wanted Cesaro to win. I don't think Cesaro should have won this match, because him losing to Roman Reigns the way that Daniel Bryan lost to Roman Reigns, that type of loss kind of fits Daniel Bryan a lot more, because he's the ultimate underdog. He is the one that fights through and is so tough and everything, and it would gain sympathy from the fans. So for someone like Cesaro to win and then have that type of a loss, it probably wouldn't have worked as well, as far as how dominant Roman Reigns is, and as far as, how dominant he is, and then gets attacked by Edge like that. So, after that, we had Bad Bunny backstage. The Miz shows up. They start going back and forth a little bit. Bad Bunny mentioned, "Why are you here? Do you even have a title shot?" The Miz pushed him, and then Bad Bunny slaps him. He turns away. When he turns back, we see Damian Priest in his face. Now, I am a fan of Damian Priest, and I don't know what's going to happen to him once WrestleMania is over and Bad Bunny is gone. I love his gimmick, because he is Hispanic, and his gimmick isn't like typical Hispanic, but when you're on the main roster, you know what they do. Like, I will not be surprised if he ends up in some damn tag team match with the Lucha House Party. I really can see that happening to my guy. And a little thing too, they keep messing up his entrance when he shoots the arrow at the screen. It's supposed to be like an instant, his name's supposed to instantly pop up, but for some reason on Raw, every single time when he shoots his arrow, it takes like 5 to 10 seconds for his name to pop up. So, it's that. So after that, we have the triple threat match, Bobby Lashley versus John Morrison versus Riddle. We had, first of all, I don't know if anybody caught this, but the referee in this match almost got ran over by Lashley a couple of times. And he was cracking me up too. This is one of my favorite referees. If you ever notice him, and you probably will now once you see him more, he has these facial expressions that like cracks me up. Because normally wrestlers, they like react to moves, something like that. A lot of the refs in AEW, they'll kind of like jump with certain moves, stuff like that. My guy, my referee, he just have these looks like it was one move Bobby Lashley did, like he started dominating people and Bobby Lashley was standing there and my guy was like, come on brother, don't be doing that to them. But anyway, John Morrison though, he was definitely really good in this match, and I heard he was really good in the Fatal 4-Way as well. And I was really hoping that we would get this John Morrison back, the guy who, once he gets in between the ropes, just puts on a great show. I feel as though he may go down to NXT since his wife got signed and that his wife is there, that maybe he'll go down there together with her. I think it'll suit him a lot more because, like Edge says, NXT is about the second W in WWE, whereas though on the main roster, he does nothing but the dirt sheets with the Miz and sits there and says correct and barely does any matches anyway. Riddle comes out. Riddle was wearing the Evil Knievel type of outfit. And this triple threat match, it was pretty good. I'm not the biggest fan of Riddle, really. I really don't like him the way he is on the main roster, that he's just like this surfer dude, like, bro, as he pops up on my screen. And I feel as though, like, I feel as though there's more that they can do with him versus the typical like surfer type of dude. He kind of reminds me of oh my gosh, it's a character in one of the 90s movies. I want to say from Wayne's World. I think Wayne's World. Yeah, he reminds me of a character from Wayne's World. Like the bro, the dudette, and stuff like that. If you never heard of Wayne's World, because I know I am up there in age, definitely it's a movie for you to check out. You probably know it from the Super Bowl commercial now because Cardi B was in it. That's Wayne's World. So Bobby Lashley was very dominant in this match, and to the point that Riddle and John Morrison decided to team up to try to take out Bobby Lashley, which of course didn't really work at all. This match was pretty much about the dominance of Bobby Lashley. MVP was cracking me up to ringside because John Morrison, I forgot what move he did, but he tried to pin Bobby Lashley. Of course, Bobby Lashley kicked out, and MVP was sitting there like, you really think that was going to work? You really think that you were going to win the match with that? And Morrison looks at him and says, shut the hell up. So I cracked up at that. And then towards the end of the match, we had Riddle who came out to the outside to kind of like confront MVP. And then Riddle notices that MVP is holding a crutch. And he does the smart thing of, no, it might have been, was it Riddle or was it Morrison? I forgot, one of them. I think it was Morrison. Saw that he had a crutch, took the crutch, got in there. Actually, it was Riddle because Bobby Lashley had the put the hurt lock on Morrison. Riddle takes the crutch, hits Bobby Lashley with it with all his might. I don't know if it was. I know the crutch probably wasn't like, top one thing. I know that the crutch wasn't like 100% stainless steel, but it broke, and it broke twice for each time that that it hit Bobby Lashley. Riddle goes, pins Morrison, and Riddle is now the new champion. And my thought was, if first of all, if Keith Lee wasn't injured, what would have happened in this match? Would Keith Lee be the one who got pinned by Riddle? I really wonder that. If Keith Lee was supposed to be the one who get pinned by Riddle. Or did they switch it up and have Riddle win because Keith Lee got injured and Keith Lee was the one who was actually supposed to win the title? I'm very curious about that. If what was the actual move that they were supposed to go. Next up after that, a match that I didn't realize was going to happen. We have Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler versus Bianca Belaire and Sasha Banks. Now, first off, we were supposed to. This is supposed to have been a second women's match, but I will get to that in a moment. This match was okay. Of course, this is displaying Bianca Belaire and Sasha Banks as buddies. This was a good match. We had Reginald that was ringside for some reason. I don't know if I maybe had missed it because I try to catch Smackdown live. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I don't know if I missed anything. Is Carmella okay with Reginald, buttering up and shooting his shot with Sasha Banks? I know that, that's not Carmella's man, obviously. But I don't know if, she's upset that her employee is shooting his shot with her enemy. I don't know. I knew that Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler was going to retain the title, seeing as though that they have to defend it next week against Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai. I really didn't think that they would switch champions now to kind of mess up that little bit of tension that they built with Nia Jax and Raquel Gonzalez. But Nia Jax got the pin, so it is what it is. I fully expected for Sasha to turn on Bianca Belaire, but we're all waiting for Bianca Belaire to say that she is going against Sasha Banks. I mean, the girl said it on Twitter. There's really no reason for them to act like we don't know what's about to happen. She wants to go against Sasha Banks at WrestleMania. Let it happen. And I think Sasha Banks is the one who has to turn heel. Bianca Belaire as a heel really doesn't work out because the girl is very nice as a person. And when she first came on the scene, I always felt that there was something missing from her. And I realized is because she was a heel. She is not naturally a mean person. And so her trying to be a heel really wasn't working out. Her as a babyface, especially going into WrestleMania, would definitely work, especially in front of the fans. So we were supposed to have Asuka versus Lacey Evans. Of course, the Monday before Elimination Chamber, Lacey Evans revealed that she is pregnant, and she was actually pregnant in real life. People, because of this whole storyline with her and Ric Flair, I guess, you would think it was supposed to have been Ric Flair's child, but then he said on Raw that, he didn't say it was his kid, even though they have this weird relationship thing going on anyway. So I was like, okay, because they still said that, the match was going on. And then come Sunday, the day of, they decided, oh no, we're just going to cancel the match. So I don't understand how Keith Lee got injured and got taken out of the match. You quickly came up with a fatal 4-way to replace him. But for your women's champion, you couldn't come up with a plan B. You can easily put together another fatal 4-way match on the pre-show. The match didn't even have to be that long because this pay-per-view ended 15 minutes early. So you definitely could have squeezed in Asuka in there, okay? Everybody, if you listen to this podcast, I am a fan of Asuka. What has happened to her on the main roster is a bit of a tragedy because every time she is champion, it's like she is just champion on paper. She rarely defends the title. If she does defend the title, it's mainly for storyline purposes anyway. And she's just there as just a sidekick. You could have easily put together a fatal 4-way match for her. Hell, she could have faced Peyton Royce for all I care, but just to show her on TV and show her being a little more dominant instead of being the sidekick for Charlotte Flair. Because we all know what's going to happen come WrestleMania. We know that Charlotte Flair is going to take the title off of Asuka. We all know that's coming. But at least show some bit of respect for your other women's champion. With Sasha Banks, you have her on the pay-per-views and things like that. But with Asuka, the only thing she's doing is tag team matches, which don't make that much sense for me. And this is what I always say. One of my complaints about WWE is that they cannot concentrate on more than one women's storyline at a time. It's one big storyline, maybe a second storyline, since they have the two brands, but anything else outside of that storyline, they can't do that. And this definitely showed with this pay-per-view. They could have easily put together something. So now we come to the main event. This is the Raw Elimination Chamber. We had Randy Orton, who came out first, Jeff Hardy, Drew McIntyre, Kofi Kingston, AJ Styles, and Sheamus. So I had picked for Drew McIntyre to retain because my thinking was that Drew McIntyre was going to go into WrestleMania as champion. Let's go through what happened here. So Kofi Kingston, first of all, was cracking me up before the match started. He was as each person comes in, when Sheamus comes in, he stood up to Drew McIntyre's pod. Drew McIntyre headbutts the pod. Then he goes over to AJ Styles, I think, too. Then gets into his pod. When Randy Orton comes out, Kofi Kingston was sitting there I see you. He was like, I see you flexing. Your quads, they're nice. Your quads are big. He's like, you got some quads. I see you flexing over there. He's like, I see you slithering. You slithering tonight. You got some big quads there. Then he said, you must be doing squats. And I think Randy Orton had to walk away before he started cracking up. He did have a smile on his face, but it was more of that sinister type of smile that he likes to give. But I knew he was dying on the inside because that was hilarious. He goes over to Drew McIntyre, stares him down, goes over to AJ Styles. AJ Styles saying, oh, look at the scary man. Here comes the scary guy. But Randy Orton and Jeff Hardy starts off this match. truthfully, and I know I'm going to hurt some people's feelings about that, Jeff Hardy really doesn't do it for me anymore. I respect the guy. You cannot take away what Jeff Hardy has done in the company. But for like the past 2-3 years, Jeff Hardy is just, he is like, is missing, you know? It's not, watching him wrestling isn't as exciting anymore. I can say the same thing about his brother, too. I mean, his brother had a little bit of resurgence when he came over to AEW. But now he's like doing this like weird coach Vince McMahon-ish type of thing as well. And he's wrestling these matches that are a little bit scary. But for his brother, Jeff Hardy, it's just the magic isn't there anymore. I don't know what's there left for him to do, really. I mean, it feels like he's just wrestling until it's time for him to retire. But it's not a lot of magic like it used to be. But with Orton and Jeff Hardy, it was pretty much a standard match, like I said. I mean, Jeff Hardy, you know, he does his high spots and things like that, but it's a lot of the spots that we've seen before. I mean, nothing compared to, you know, their match when it went vicious and Randy Orton put like a screwdriver through his earlobe and everything like that. Then comes out Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre then gets very dominant. Of course, he is the champion, the quarantine champion, as I like to call him. Then we had, was it Kofi Kingston comes out after that? Yeah. Kofi Kingston comes out after that. And I think it was, one of them, I forgot who it was, but they started to do their finishers back to back. And AJ Styles turned to Omos and told him, like, get me out of here. Get me out of here. Get me out of here. Because he saw an opportunity to eliminate someone. Omos, I keep saying Omos. Omos tears the door off. And AJ Styles gets out through the back door. Actually, what happened is Randy Orton gets eliminated. And I thought it was weird that Randy Orton got eliminated so early. Because I thought this would be like the introduction of, you know, either the Fiend returning or maybe Alexa Bliss would do something to kind of distract him to get him, you know, to get him eliminated. I thought that we would do something to move that storyline along, but I see that it happened on Raw instead. As Randy Orton is walking out, that's when AJ Styles come in, because that's how he was able to get into the chamber, and he tries to pin each and every person. Of course, everybody kicks out. Adam Pearce comes out and kicks out Omos, and I was confused as to why he was down there in the first place. One ref kicked out the poor documentary crew. I mean, all they were was just regular guys, you know, even though they were probably from the PC Center. They were just regular people, you know, just filming the documentary, which I'm still waiting for Sami Zayn to come out with. You know, he's been filming for what, maybe 3 months, maybe by now. I think there's enough footage for them to put together like a little 30-minute to an hour type of situation, but you know, it is what it is. Then Drew McIntyre had slammed Kofi Kingston into the cage and then onto the floor. I mean, he went to suplex him, and he suplexed him into the cage and onto the floor. I think it was Jeff Hardy that he threw into the pod. A very funny spot. You see Drew McIntyre go up to the cameraman and go, "I told you to move." That was me trying to do his accent. Don't come at me. But he was sitting there like, "I told you to move." Like, cameraman, get the hell out of the way. Cameraman, you know, have no fear. They're willing to get as close to the action as they can, obviously. Then Sheamus comes out as last. We see Drew McIntyre do the slow turn to see Sheamus comes out. Sheamus comes out, you know, him and Drew McIntyre start doing the hockey punches, as I like to call it. Then there was, later on in the match, there was this powerbomb suplex combo, and Kofi Kingston was laying on the top of the pod. He does his, I call it the trust fall. I don't know if he actually has a name for it, but he does the little trust fall onto everyone below. Then Kofi gets bro kicked and then gets eliminated. So I'm sure that broke a lot of hearts, because everybody was wondering why Kofi Kingston wasn't in the Elimination Chamber, and they even started to get the idea of Kofi Mania 2, which, you know, I knew Kofi Mania 2 wasn't going to happen. Sorry to say for people. And then we had Jeff Hardy, who did a dive off of the top of the pod as well. He did a swanton bomb, and then he got Claymore kicked, and then he was eliminated. So now we're down to Drew McIntyre, AJ Styles, and Sheamus as well. AJ Styles tries to do his 450 splash, but unfortunately he slipped off the rope, did a bit of a 180. Not that often that we see him, mess up or botch any of his moves. But he just proved no, that was just a slip up, too much sweat on the rope or whatever. Because then he goes back to the 450 splash and then nails it perfectly. He did it on McIntyre, but Drew McIntyre then kicked out. Sheamus went to do a bro kick on AJ Styles, but AJ Styles did a phenomenal forearm, and then Sheamus was then eliminated. So I was like, oh, we're going to have AJ Styles versus Drew McIntyre. I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting. But no, we didn't get that much of it. Because then AJ Styles went to do the phenomenal forearm. He got Claymore instead. And then Drew McIntyre wins. And there it is, folks. Wrap them up. That's the end of the pay-per-view. Or so we thought. Well, I thought we was just going to have Drew McIntyre go, like he does on top of the rope. And he went to celebrate, and then out comes Bobby Lashley. And I was like, oh, here we go. This is why Bobby Lashley has been dominant. He lost the title, and he is out on bigger and better things. Now, flashback, we did see we saw a segment. It reminded me of Impact almost, the way the camera angle was. We saw MVP talking to The Miz. So kind of planted the seeds there that we might have gotten a possible cash in. But Bobby Lashley went and decimated poor little Drew McIntyre. He starts, attacking Drew McIntyre and everything like that. Then there was the shot. He starts to look over at the entranceway, and here comes The Miz. And The Miz comes out. He starts attacking Drew McIntyre. He went to do a DDT on Drew McIntyre, but then Drew McIntyre had kicked out of that. Oops. He went to do a DDT, and then Drew McIntyre had kicked out of it. Then he went and did the I forgot his finishing move just like that quick. The finale, and 1, 2, 3, and we got a new champion, ladies and gentlemen. And I sat there and I said, I am going to cheer for The Miz as champion as much as I did when Drew McIntyre was champion, because everybody complained that there was we need change. I'm tired of the same champions. I want something different. And we got something different. And I'm going to put on my sunglasses in honor of our new champion, The Miz, the A-lister. It took him 10 years, I think it was 10 to 11 years for him to get the title back. And he got it back. Skull crushing finale. Thank you, Chris. I knew it was finale in there, but I blanked out on what his finisher was. He did the skull crushing finale, and we got a new champion. And where is the Miz girl? Where is she? That was the face that a lot of people had on their face when the Miz won. I cracked up. I was like, look, we got something different. Let this story play out, ladies and gentlemen. Don't get immediately upset that the Miz won. Let the story play out. We know that Bobby Lashley attacked Drew McIntyre for a reason, and we saw it when the next day on Raw, Bobby Lashley comes out, straight did a Debo on The Miz, sat there and told The Miz, you got 1 hour to give me the title, or else you're going to star in a reality show called How Bobby Lashley Put Me in the Emergency Room. I said, go ahead, Debo. You go ahead, man. You go ahead. The Miz was scared as all hell, sat there and was like, I need time. I have to prepare for this. Bobby Lashley at the end of that hour came out like ready to go. And so from that, we were supposed to get The Miz versus Bobby Lashley next week. But then Braun Strowman comes out and was like, I wasn't in the Elimination Chamber, and then sat there and mentioned that he used to be the Universal Champion. I don't know what's going on with Braun Strowman, because he like, you pretty much contradicted yourself, and he was like, this sucks, everything sucks, why don't I get a title shot tonight, and all this other stuff. So they set up the match for Braun Strowman versus Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley decimated Braun Strowman. And so next Monday, we're going to get The Miz versus Bobby Lashley. And so, for all the people who complained about The Miz being champion, he might be champion for 1 week for all we know. Dave, Bray Wyatt is now The Fiend. And so The Fiend, I got to catch you up on this, bro. The Fiend got set on fire by Randy Orton. Look it up on YouTube. It's a lot. He changed to The Fiend like you saw, and he went against Randy Orton and he got set on fire. And so now he disappeared. He might be resurrected because Alexa Bliss was doing some demon stuff. She had drawn out the Satan symbol out, looked like in blood, with candles. Randy Orton was talking on Raw, and I noticed he coughed, and I was like, coronavirus. But no, he was coughing because Alexa Bliss did some type of, black magic or something. He started coughing up black stuff. It was definitely reminded me of some Resident Evil type of stuff as well. But yeah, another thing that I forgot to mention too, he's been gone since the Royal Rumble. But he's going to come back for WrestleMania to go against, he's going to go against Randy Orton, of course. But he has Alexa Bliss. You have to YouTube it, man. You got to YouTube it. Because he has Alexa Bliss with him. Alexa Bliss has been perfect with her role. You'll like her role, definitely. Another thing I forgot to mention with Mustafa Ali, I was watching the Retribution, and I've been playing the Division 2. If you don't know what that is, it's a video game. And it just clicked to me immediately that the people that Mason, T-Bar, and Slapjack, they remind me of the enemies in the Division 2. If you never played Division 2, just Google the Division 2 hyenas, and that's what they remind me of. You'll laugh when you see it. But yeah, so very, very good show, truthfully. The Women's Tag Team Championship really wasn't it was good, but it wasn't very good. The Smackdown Elimination Chamber was the best match of the night. What happened to the Drew McIntyre and The Miz winning the championship was definitely the swerve that we're going for. What I think is going to happen now, so I thought that we would get Bobby Lashley versus The Miz at Fastlane, where then Bobby Lashley will win the title there and then take the title to WrestleMania to go against Drew McIntyre. I feel like Drew McIntyre might win at WrestleMania because he'll actually get his moment in front of the fans like he haven't, because he's been the quarantine champion this whole time. Some people feel there's people who's they're so upset and how Drew McIntyre, lost his reign and stuff like that. I think they're doing this so that he can get his title shot, his title back in front of fans. He'll be a 3-time champion. It was weird that he lost his title to Randy Orton and then win it back within a week. But I think this time they gave it up. Keep the title on Miz. I hope they do keep the title on Miz. But I have a feeling he's a transitional champion, unfortunately. There's people who felt as though he wasted his Money in the Bank briefcase, his Money in the briefcase shot, which I don't know how he wasted it because he won. He has the title. When we look up title, former title reigns and stuff like that, he's going to be on the page, unlike a lot of other people. Damian Sandow comes to the top of my head of people who wasted their shot because he tried to cash in on, I think it was John Cena, but he gave John Cena a bit of a heads up before he cashed in. So that's someone who wasted the title. I don't know how you guys wanted to book the briefcase. It was on Otis and it was a lunchbox. They pretty much used the briefcase so that they could sell another item on the WWE shop. I think the briefcase was used perfectly here. Truthfully, if you're going to take the point of the briefcase is to defeat the champion when he's down, when you know that you can definitely beat him. That's the full point of it. But I was hoping that The Miz would keep the title at least till Fastlane. It would be interesting if they decide to have him go into WrestleMania as champion. But I love The Miz as champion. Oh, because he plays the douchebag role so well. And now that he has the title, what? These promos are going to be hilarious because he's going to do nothing but piss people off because he knows how to piss people off. And so people are like, oh, I'm upset that he has the title. That's the point. That's the point of it. He's supposed to make you upset that he won the title. He cashed in. He plays the douchebag well. He's going to sit there and say that he's the A-lister. He's going to do the point that I love that he does and everything. I hope that, I really hope that for every time that he has this title, that he really takes it to level 10 and just pump it up, sit there and be on the phone. Miz is awesome. I don't know if it's Keita or Jay who's on, but Miz is awesome. I liked the Miz. I liked the Miz back when he was on the Real World. That's how long I have been a fan for the Miz. I have been a fan for the Miz since he was on the Real World. I actually watched that season when it came out. I don't know if that's a good thing that I say that or if it's a bad thing because I'm showing a bit of age here. But I remember when he was on the Real World and he sat there and said the Miz. And so when he went on Tough Enough and he actually got the contract and everything, I had mad respect for him because I was like, yo, that is someone who fought for what they wanted to do. He sat there and said back then that he was going to be in the WWE, and now he's in the WWE, and he's been in the WWE for I think he said 16 years now. That's longevity. That's a long time in WWE. Because WWE, they're known for cutting you. They will cut you. You will not be seen on TV. And I was listening to y'all's show, Keita and Jay, earlier today. I listened to one episode and the other half, and I was listening to the episode of Rob, and I didn't know that Bo Dallas is still employed, which I could have sworn that man got fired 2 years ago. But Bo Dallas is still employed with the WWE, ladies and gentlemen, which he's turning into JTG. I think people shouldn't let that out too much, or else they're gonna say, who? Who's still on the roster? And then we'll see him cut after WrestleMania. If he's cut after, Jay's enjoying his birthday. Happy belated birthday to you too. I don't know if I said happy birthday to you on Facebook, Keita, but happy belated. Jay's enjoying his birthday. But yeah, if Bo Dallas gets fired this year, Keita, you and Rob are to blame because you guys were the one who put it out there. Y'all put it out into the atmosphere that Bo Dallas is still employed with the WWE. And I checked out the Broken Skull sessions with Sasha Banks afterwards. It was pretty interesting to hear her story about how she got started and stuff like that. But I was watching to see if they were going to talk about when she left the WWE, which she did. She mentioned how, she lost passion. She didn't know who she was anymore. And she told Vince McMahon, I'm done. I'm leaving. And Vince McMahon told her, you're not leaving. I'll give you 30 days. And she took longer than 30 days. So kind of what she said was kind of true. What we heard, it feels like it was kind of true. Seeing as though that is Stone Cold, Broken Sessions, of course they won't go too much into the actual story. But it seems like it is true. She was unhappy with WWE and the way things were going, especially with the tag team titles. And she decided to I'm done. And a lot of people wonder, what would have happened if Vince McMahon just said go? She would have probably ended up in AEW. And I wonder how the women's division would have definitely been back at that point. I'm sure the women's division will be 10 times better than what it is now. So that was the Elimination Chamber review. Overall, it was a pretty good pay-per-view. I mean, we're on the road to WrestleMania, so this is the time where the storylines start to get together. We see WrestleMania start to shape up because there's 2 nights again this year. I guess, it works out this year, especially since they're trying to have fans, that they're going to have 25,000 fans. And I wonder if they're going to do what the Super Bowl did and have cutouts. I don't know if they're going to have like the LED boards. I don't know how they're going to have that set up in that stadium, especially if it rains or something like that. They'll run into that issue. But I wonder if they're going to have cutouts. Knowing WWE, they'll probably charge for the cutouts on top of that too. You probably have to pay like $100 to $500 for a cutout. I know the internationals will do it. They're crazy. They're really crazy. I hope it's the internationals who show up live too, because they'll definitely have it rocking. I just hope whoever shows up live at WrestleMania, don't sit on your hands. Please don't. It's 25,000 of y'all. Y'all can quickly shout, beforehand. Show up early during the pre-show. Get together. Do some hand signs or something. Talk amongst yourselves of chants. I don't mind hearing "This is awesome" chant now. I don't mind definitely a holy shit chant, a bullshit chant. I want to hear chants. I want to hear cheering. I want to hear booing. I want to hear Roman Reigns get cheered because they love to pipe in the booing sound for Roman Reigns. And they'll have people like put their thumbs down, but we all know they're being told to put their thumbs down. I just want to hear an authentic sound. I'm tired of hearing the plexiglass banging, the booing that's louder than the pipe-in sound that's louder than the mic, even though, when fans come back, they'll be louder than the mic anyway. But I love the fact that there won't be that much control anymore from Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn when the fans come back. So like I said, that is the review. I'm going into the AMA session. I know I should have started out with some of these things from the get-go, but if you don't know who I am Jaydee. This is the Wrestlebread podcast, episode 100. Can't believe that it's 100 episodes. I started this podcast because I like talking about wrestling, and I don't know that many people who I could talk to about wrestling, especially for as much as I like to talk about wrestling. I started watching wrestling when I was 8 years old. I thought I was 9, but I was actually 8 years old. I started watching. My first pay-per-view was, the first time I watched wrestling was at SummerSlam 1992. I was a bit of a tomboy when I was younger, and so I would stay over my cousin's house during the summers, and I was the only girl. I had 3 boy cousins. 2 of them were brothers, and we would all stay at the house at my aunt's house for the whole summer. And my cousins had mentioned like, oh, wrestling's on. So I was like, what the heck? Thanks, Chris. And I'm sitting here like, what the heck? What are we about to turn on? And they turned on to SummerSlam 92. And the first match that we saw, I don't know what point in the match it was, but it was the Ultimate Warrior versus Macho Man. And I was one of those kids who, watched Batman, watched the cartoons and stuff like growing up. I was more into, like I said, Batman. I used to watch Spider-Man cartoons and X-Men and stuff like that. So seeing Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man, I was like, I was like amazed by it. And from then I started, watching the pay-per-views. After that, I started watching Raw and things like that. And there are podcasters out there who say, they know all these different, promotions, and they watched this when they were younger, but when they watched that when they were younger, WCW, stuff like that. I was a WWF fan. I was loyal to WWF. I didn't really watch WCW. I knew of WCW. I knew of like the NWO and stuff like that. And I knew like of people in WCW. And there were a few times that I would like catch a little bit of like maybe a pay-per-view a little bit or a little bit of the show, but straight up, I was straight up WWF. I watched every Raw. I watched every Smackdown. I watched the pay-per-views. And I know you're probably thinking, now back then, the pay-per-views, we weren't paying no $10 a month. Back then, when you would watch the pay-per-views, they would be $50 a month. And I was watching before they started the monthly pay-per-views. I watched when it was just only SummerSlam, Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, and then WrestleMania. That's it. And you was just catching Raw after that. And so then they started the In Your House pay-per-views, and then they started doing that monthly stuff. I wasn't paying. Back then, we had something called cable boxes. And if you knew someone who knew someone who knew someone, you would have what's called the chip. And the chip would give you all the channels, including all the pay-per-views. And so my mom had one of the boxes, and that's how I was catching all the all the pay-per-views, all the Raws, all the Smackdown, everything. I used to like tape the pay-per-views and stuff like that. But growing up, there wasn't a lot of people who I could talk to with wrestling, especially me being a girl. I wasn't really into talking about like makeup and stuff like that. Like, I just wanted to talk about like who the Undertaker, the mind games that Undertaker was doing, and oh my gosh, what's going to happen with Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, and oh my goodness, here comes Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like, I wanted those conversations. And growing up, to be truthful, like, it was like weird for a girl to talk about wrestling, especially a black girl at the time. It was weird for me to talk about wrestling. Even to this day, I have people who are like, you still watch that? And I can't believe you're still into it. And it's like, yeah, I mean, there's people who's into like love and hip hop. There's people who's into like Real Housewives. There's people who's into soap operas. There's people who's into reading novels. Like, it is what it is. It's a big world. Thanks, Keita. It is a big world out there. And if I want to spend 8 hours a week watching wrestling, that's what I'll do, But as far as like favorite episodes that I've done in this podcast, I would say one of my top episodes that I did was episode 80, and that was the review of the Halloween Havocs of the past. I went to social media and asked people to give me suggestions of matches to catch from Halloween Havoc, because like I said, what I wanted to, when I was growing up, I watched nothing but WWF. So I missed a lot on WCW. And there were things that I saw, like NWO, when Medusa threw the title in the trash, stuff like that. But I really didn't sat there and watch, I didn't experience like Rey Mysterio in WCW. I didn't experience Chris Jericho or anything like that. And so watching the Halloween Havocs, especially Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio, when I saw that match for episode 80, I was blown away. And I was like, had I known that this was, what's happening in WCW, because I viewed WCW as the promotion that took all the rejects from WWE. Like, I really felt that way. Like, I was like die hard. When it came to the Monday Night Wars, I was on WWE's side. But I was sitting there like, had I watched, these type of matches, I probably have been like, it's really cool to watch. And I probably would have watched a lot more of WCW. And also my other favorite episodes that I did too was episode 48 through 51. That's when I was doing the reviews of WrestleMania. The Royal Rumble is my favorite pay-per-view, but I always have respect. I always love WrestleMania. And that's because me and WrestleMania pretty much were born. And I'm going to put it out there. I know a lot of women don't say their age, but I'm the same age as the WrestleMania. So I always have like a special connection to WrestleMania because it always falls around my birthday. This year, WrestleMania takes place the day after my birthday. So my birthday is on the 9th, for Friday. And then there will be WrestleMania on Saturday and Sunday. So, that's going to be a very fun weekend. What's next for the podcast? Well, I've always been solo, and I didn't have any guests for the whole, 100 episodes. And I listened to what you guys are saying. And it is difficult as, a solo podcast to, like, come out here because I don't have anyone to really interact with. I just started streaming live on Mixler probably maybe 2 months ago, and that was only because my computer is not working, still not working. But I like interacting with people as far as live. So when someone's watching live and they're answering questions like that, I love that because I'm bouncing off of people. But as a solo podcaster, you don't really have anyone to what's going on, Clark Street Wrestling? Thank you. And I want to thank, you guys and Keita and Jay and Moneymaker Chris and everybody for all the support for the past 100 episodes. Like I said, as a solo podcaster, it is a little difficult to really, come up and I'm pretty much talking to myself. I'm talking to a microphone, especially before I was live. I used to record episodes And it was crazy when I was recording episodes before I started doing live streams. I would record episodes like 11 o'clock at night, like 5 o'clock in the morning and stuff like that. And so it's what is next for the podcast. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Will I like start integrating like guests and stuff like that? I might. I'm thinking about it, especially now that I have a locked in day and time to stream. I'm every Thursday now at 9 o'clock. It's very locked in. So now it's open for guests, because before I couldn't have guests, because I was recording like all different times. It was just like so whack when I was recording. So it was kind of like a blessing in disguise that my computer stopped working, because it forced me to like stream live. But I'm like, if I'm going to stream live, I can't like stream 8 o'clock on a Wednesday and then stream the next week on Thursday and stuff like that. So now I'm like, I have a locked in time. So more likely I'm gonna start opening up with, having people on the podcast, things like that. First of all, I got some, and it's really exciting, and it's just like weird, like not really like imposter syndrome, but it's like very weird that I have a podcast and like people are listening, and not just like my little group of people and other podcasters who I interact with a lot, but there's like people I don't even speak to who like are listening to this podcast, which is like a bit of a weird thing. But I'm just going to keep going. And like I have, first of all, I have like Fight TV that's following the podcast on Twitter. Today, Just Incredible is following the podcast. He follows, me on Twitter at Jaydee Talks. But today he follows the podcast, which is like crazy because I used to watch him in ECW. But yeah, what's next for the podcast? We're just gonna keep going. If I make it to episode 200, that would be like so awesome. But the 2-year anniversary of the podcast is coming in April. That's gonna be a fun week. I don't know exactly what I'm gonna do that week, because that runs. Monday is the podcast 2-year anniversary. Friday is the birthday. Saturday, Sunday is WrestleMania. So I have to figure out what I'm gonna do for year 2. But yeah, what's next for the podcast is I'll start having people on. I might, kick in my old journalism skills and start bringing in like wrestlers and stuff like that, and into interviews and stuff like that. So definitely the sky's the limit for what's coming next for the podcast. Getting into the Ask Me Anything. If you're in chat, you can definitely ask questions as well. But I went to Twitter and Instagram to ask people, what is it that you want your girl to talk about? Questions you want to ask me. But I went over the bit of the basics of who I am. Like I said, I was a tomboy. I play video games. If you look right there, there is the PS5 that I got for Christmas. I watch football on Sundays. I don't really go out. I rather stay in, play video games, watch wrestling, and watch football. So that is me. Favorite team is the Cowboys, and this kind of ties into Moneymaker's Chris question of what made me become a Cowboys fan and not an Eagles fan. So I'm from Philly, if you don't know, and no, I am not an Eagles fan. I'm a Cowboys fan, which in Philadelphia is like walking around with a bullseye on your chest. Except for me, I wear my Cowboys gear, and I guess it's the look on my face, like, go ahead and say something to me. I normally bump into other Cowboys fans who would say something, but I normally get, like, one of the Eagles fans like, hey, why are you wearing that? So growing up, I got into football probably, like, 2000, 2001, maybe even before that. I remember going to my brother's house. My brother is much older than me, and he likes to watch football. He's a Cowboys fan, and I remember he had on the TV, and I was in like his daughter's room or something like that, and the TV was on, and there was a football game on, and it was the Broncos. And I remember watching it, and I was like, yeah, I like that. I like them. So I knew, seeing that my brother is a Cowboys fan, I knew that you don't have to like the hometown team. Like, there are other teams. There's 32 teams in the NFL. I don't have to stick to the hometown team if I don't like them. So, now, what you hear about the Philly fans is true. There is a number of Phillies fans who are actually human beings, but the way that Phillies fans are, they're crazy. And so growing up, like, I didn't want to be associated with that because I don't react to things like that. I wouldn't throw beer at an opposing fan just because they're an opposing fan. I'm not going to fight a fan because my team lost. I'm not going to sit there and do crazy things because the Eagles won. Like, I didn't want to be affiliated with that. So when I started to really watch football, I was like, all right, well, what team am I going to be a fan of? Because I didn't want to be an Eagles fan because I didn't want to be affiliated with that. I wasn't, and I know this is going to be funny because I'm going to say it. I wasn't really a big fan of the organization because I saw what happened to Brian Dawkins, which is what happened after I started watching football, and I was like, I don't really like the organization, which is weird, which is a bit of contradictory for me to say, seeing as though I'm a fan of the Cowboys, and it's Jerry Jones who is pretty much every position in Dallas except for the quarterback. But when I decided to watch football, I was like, okay, well, what team am I going to be a fan of? So I'm an Aries. So I was like, oh, I'm going to be a fan of the Rams then, because it's a Ram. And ironically, that was the year of the greatest show on turf. And then I think it was like it was also the year after that too, because they went to the Super Bowl against Tom Brady, and Tom Brady beat them. And that's what started me not liking Tom Brady. So what got me as a Cowboys fan? So I started to be known as the girl who liked football when I used to work in retail. And the Hubs, who I just started dating at the time, I made a bet with him because he was a Cowboys fan. He would sit there and make fun of the Rams. Now, I was a fan of the Rams, but I realized I was more a fan of Kurt Warner and some of the other players. I didn't realize that, when you decide that you're a fan of a team, if you're a fan of a player, you shouldn't be a fan of the team. I was a fan of Kurt Warner, especially his story and stuff like that. And so Kurt Warner got traded, and there was, I think his name was Mark Bulger or something like that. He was a terrible quarterback at first of all. They tanked after that. And I was like, I realized that's when I was like, I'm actually a Kurt Warner fan. I'm not really a Rams fan. And I wanted a way to get out of that. So the Hubs is a Cowboys fan. He's been a Cowboys fan for a very long time. So I made him a bet because the Cowboys and the Rams were supposed to, go against each other. And I was like, look, if the Cowboys win, I'll be a Rams fan. If the Rams win, you'll be a Rams fan. He was like, all right. And I kind of knew that the Rams weren't going to win. So that's kind of how I became a Cowboys fan. So I know that's a ridiculous story, but I was never an Eagles fan. So it was a matter of who I was going to be what team I was going to stick with. So I'm not a Cowboys fan because how much I don't like the Eagles fan. I'm not that type of Cowboys fans. Because there's a lot of people in Philly who are a Cowboys fan just because they can talk crap about the Eagles. No. I'm actually a football fan. When the Eagles won the Super Bowl, I was happy for them. I had my day off because I worked downtown and the parade went through downtown. So I had the day off and I actually watched the parade. I was happy for the city. I was happy for the team. But that's why I am not an Eagles fan, because I really didn't want to be associated with that. Like I said, the things that you hear about Eagles fans, that is true. When they won the Super Bowl, there is someone who actually ate horse poop. They tore up downtown. They actually went around and greased the poles because they knew that people would try to climb up the telephone poles. What else? There is an intersection in Northeast Philly that every time the Eagles do something, they all go out. They all go outside and stand in the middle of the street and just start cheering and stuff. And then normally a fight breaks out. But yeah, that's why I am not an Eagles fan, because I don't want to be associated with that. I'd rather be the football fan that lives in the 90s. I like the decade anyway, so I'm fine with that. Let's see. At the J Giles said, if you could interview any wrestler past or present, who would it be? Congratulations on reaching the 100 milestone. So I thought about this question and I was like, my answer would have been The Undertaker, but The Undertaker is one of those people, especially now that he is retired, you can't really pull stories out of him. Like, you have to know the questions to ask him because he'll get tired of the same questions. And he's not really a storyteller because he's been like quiet on, things that happened backstage for so long. The person, and he's not really a wrestler, but the person who I would love to interview is Paul Heyman. Whenever Paul Heyman talks, he is a storyteller. He's a great storyteller. And I feel as though like interviewing Paul Heyman would probably be the easiest thing because he is such a great storyteller. And I feel as though the interview will like really flow. All I have, I'll ask a question. He'll say something like great. And then you just kind of like feedback off of that. Because the best people to interview is people who you can easily feedback off of instead of the people who you really got to pull answers out of. So it would be Paul Heyman. I would love to talk to Paul Heyman. Of course, I'm from Philly, so I have love for Paul Heyman anyway. Clark Street Wrestling asks, how would you book the women's tag team division for WWE and NXT? So the women's tag team division on the main roster upsets me. When the women's tag team championship titles came out, I was very excited for it. But I was a bit leery because they don't know how to really treat the women's championships. And the women's tag team belts on the main roster would not be treated the same in NXT. And what I would do is I would actually create a tag team belt just for NXT, for the women's division. Because the tag team belts on the main roster will be used mainly for storyline purposes instead of actually being an important belt like it would be in NXT. So I would create a women's NXT tag team title in NXT and have the women, wrestle there. Because there's actual tag teams. There's women who weren't just thrown together just for storyline purposes like they did with Lana and Naomi. I don't know how that came about. How they break up tag teams and on the main roster and then put those members with other people like Peyton Royce. So the way I would book it in NXT, it would be a legit like women's tag team title. The initial thought of what they were thinking with the women's tag team titles, how it would be defended on any show, including NXT. Great idea on paper when Sasha and Bayley had it. It was great when they had the titles because it actually meant something. They treated it like it meant something. But since they lost, that title hasn't been seen on NXT until they created a damn tournament for it. So, when they created the Dusty Women's Cup, I don't think they mentioned at first that the winners were going to get a title shot. Now the winners get a title shot, and now in NXT, like, the women's tag team titles are actually important, whereas those not as important on the main roster. As far as with Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, like, the people who they face, it was all for storyline. They were facing Nia Jax and Asuka to kind of put over the storyline between, Charlotte Flair and Asuka. They were going against them two because to push the storyline between Charlotte and Lacey Evans. They were facing Bianca Belaire and Sasha Banks. They were doing that to kind of do the storyline of them two, possibly having cracks in it, and Reginald, which includes Carmella. So the women's tag team titles in WWE are being booked more for like storyline purposes. And I feel as though there's not that much that, you can change as far as the way that they do it. Now, if I was in charge of booking for the main roster with the women's tag team titles, I would have them feel just as important as the men's tag. Well, no, they don't really treat the men's tag team titles that way either. I would treat it as if it's the Universal Championship. That's how I would book it. I would have actual tag teams so the Iconics will get back together. The Riot Squad, tag teams that actually make sense, not individual and individual will put you guys together as a tag team. Tag teams that actually make sense, that actually work. Bailey and Sasha, it worked because they're actual friends. The Riot Squad works. The Iconic works. Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler are pretty much that weird. They're almost like, not really like the Bar, because when the Bar became the Bar, they were like really good and they gelled well and everything like that. Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler are two people who kind of hate each other, but they're able to get along because they're tag team champions. But the way I would book it, I would have the Women's Tag Team Championship mean just as much as the Universal Championship. And there'll be tournaments, you know, it'll be defended between Raw and Smackdown mainly, and it will be defended at the pay-per-views, especially the main pay-per-views. I probably wouldn't have it defended like on Raw or Smackdown or anything, but to basically, you know, these tag teams on Raw and Smackdown, y'all compete, and whoever, you know, wins, it will be defended on the pay-per-view. And if they want to do storyline that they always like to, you can do that. You can do storylines with the tag team titles. I mean, I remember back in the day, the tag team titles were like the biggest thing. I mean, we had Legion of Doom, we had APA, we had a lot of different tag teams that would, you know, if they win the tag team titles, it would like to be the best thing ever. The Hardys, the Dudleys, Edge and Christian. There were a lot of great tag teams in the men's division back in the day. And I don't understand why we can't have good women's tag teams today as well. So that's how I would book the women's tag team division. At Shizolansky asked me what is my favorite video game of all time. It would be Final Fantasy VII. So I had the original Final Fantasy VII. So because I was like the only girl in the family, my cousins had a lot more video games than I did. And I had a cousin who had every single system and every single game. And we would go to his house during the summer, and that was the only time I played like Nintendo 64 and like Game Boy and stuff, because I didn't have it. I had a Nintendo, Super Nintendo, a Genesis, and I had a PlayStation 1. And the Final Fantasy VII, back in the 90s, was actually on 3 discs. And it was a very long game. And it's a, you know, RPG, of course, and it was open world, so there was a lot that you could do. And my cousin had it, one of my older cousins. So I asked him to borrow, if I could borrow the game, because, you know, I like Final Fantasy. I like RPGs. So he let me borrow Final Fantasy VII, and I go to open it, and it was only the first disc in there. I don't know what happened to the second or third disc, and my cousin lived in New Jersey. So there wasn't that many times that I saw my cousin. So I played the first disc of Final Fantasy VII over and over again. And I was able to actually finish it many, many years later. But my favorite game of all time was Final Fantasy VII. Close second is Final Fantasy X, because that game made me cry. If you don't know what happened in Final Fantasy X, definitely play it for the first time. It's gonna make you cry. The ending made me cry. So, and then third is Tetris. I love Tetris. I'm not gonna say I could beat anybody, because I know there's the people out there that can like play who are like professional. But I played Tetris since the 80s. I can blow a lot of people out of the water in Tetris. The Drew Yari Show asks, who are the podcasters you love to work with in the future? So I'm a very easygoing person. I can pretty much be on any podcast. I'll be on your podcast, Drew. But I was on other podcasts as well. So I don't mind being on other people's podcasts because I like talking to people about wrestling. The only type of podcast that I don't want to be on are the ones that like bash WWE because I'm not that type of person. I will complain about storylines. I will complain about wrestlers and their ring ability, like I did with Lacey Evans a couple of episodes ago. But I'm not going to bash WWE. WWE does a lot of questionable things. But I lived through WWE back in the Attitude Era. And I watched WWE during the whole bra and panties match and the prettiest girl is Vince McMahon's mistress, and Vince McMahon doing a lot of questionable things, and there were a lot of questionable storylines back then. So this whole PG thing didn't really bother me. Was it boring? Yeah. But now, the type of wrestling that we're getting now, where women are actually, like, yeah, though there are times where, like, you know, the women's matches aren't that good, but we have Sasha Banks, we have Becky Lynch, we have Asuka, we have Rhea Ripley, who's getting called up, we have Raquel Gonzalez, we have Xia Li, we have Bianca Belaire. A lot of women who we would never have seen back in the Attitude Era. And a lot of people always talk about Trish and Lita. Back then, that was pretty much it. The rest of the roster was nothing but models who couldn't wrestle, and all they did was bra and panties matches. So, on top of that, I'm not going to complain about WWE if I'm going to spend another 6 hours watching Raw, NXT, and Smackdown, and then sit up late till 11 o'clock at night watching a pay-per-view and paying $10 a month watching pay-per-views and documentaries and stuff. So that's pretty much the only type of podcast I will not do. I'm not going to do a Let's Bash WWE type of situation. Yes, and Shotzi Blackheart. How can I forget her? Shotzi Blackheart. And then my boo, Io Shirai. Like, we have those type of women, which we, like, me watching it growing up, I would loved to have seen those type of women. I would love to have seen those type of women. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't that many. I mean, we had Victoria, we had Jacqueline, we had Sable, you know, Sable had her moments. We had Lita, we had Trish, we had China, but we also had Sunny. If you don't know who Sunny, well, you probably know who Sunny is now, but Sunny back then, who else? I'm missing a lot. I mean, there's names coming through my head. Let's see. I know everybody likes Stacy Keibler, but Stacy Keibler didn't really. She wrestled, but she was mainly there as a pretty face. It was back then. The biggest thing for you to get on was Playboy. Not being a women's champion, it was you being on the cover of Playboy. That was the goal for almost every woman in WWF back then. WWE as well. I was watching back when Medusa was Alundra Blaze and she was champion, and there wasn't a lot of women on the roster, so she mainly went against one person, and that was pretty much it. So, like I said, the type of podcast I'm willing to work with anyone. If you want me to be on your podcast, just let me know. Date and time, I'll be there. If it's a special episode that we're covering a certain subject, you can let me know. But I'm willing to be on any type of podcast, really. From Instagram, Know the Ropes Podcast, KTR_podcast, asked, when do you think The Miz will cash in his Money in the Bank contract? And this was before Elimination Chamber. So my original answer was, I didn't think he would cash in before Mania. I figured he would cash in after Mania, because I felt as though this Mania season was going to be all about Drew McIntyre, because he's been the quarantine champion, and we're now leading up to him being champion in front of fans. So I figured he was going to go into WrestleMania as champion so he can finally get his moment with fans. But it kind of makes sense for him to lose the title now so he can go to WrestleMania and win the title back. But I originally thought that The Miz was going to cash in after WrestleMania. Because normally after WrestleMania, things kind of die down a little bit until we get closer to SummerSlam. So I figured that's when it was going to happen. I didn't really expect for him to cash in at Elimination Chamber until I saw him talking to MVP. At Giovanna_unicorn asked me, who's your favorite Raw superstar in WWE? Definitely AJ Styles. I knew who AJ Styles was before he came to WWE, but I haven't really sat down and watched a lot of his matches. I of course heard about him from New Japan, and I checked out his match with Shinsuke Nakamura before he came, and I was like an instant fan from when I saw him. So my favorite wrestler, of course, is AJ Styles. AJ Styles has been flawless this whole time. I just can't believe like he is the age that he is, and he's still able to like put on really good matches. You know that you are good when anyone who he goes against, it's a good match. He went against John Cena, and John Cena is good in the ring, but like technical wrestling and like really put on like, wow, that was a really good match type of situation, it's very rare. But when he went against AJ Styles, it like brought his wrestling ability up to like, it's probably to like a 7. Because we all know that John Cena knows like 5 moves, probably 6 or 7. But when we went against AJ Styles, it was like, oh my gosh, it was one of the best feuds. Because John Cena is mainly a storyline type of wrestler. He's not a technical wrestler. And when anyone who goes against AJ Styles, he's able to like do things on the fly. I forgot who he went against, but it was someone he went to do the Styles Clash on, which we don't really see him do that much anymore. And when you're in the Styles Clash, you don't bend your head. That's because you could break your neck. And AJ saw that he like bent his neck and adjusted in midair. I don't know how he was able to do it. Just at the midair, just to save him. So that is who my favorite Raw superstar is as well. Favorite wrestler of all time, of course, is The Undertaker. Of course. Current would be AJ Styles. Favorite female wrestler will be... So it was Asuka. But the main roster, one of the biggest things I can rant about with WWE is the treatment of Asuka. Shinsuke Nakamura is like right there. But it's the treatment of Asuka. A lot of people are upset about Cesaro too, but at least Cesaro gets to display what he can do, especially in Elimination Chamber. Asuka, not so much. Asuka has so much potential, and she's just like there. It like infuriates me with Asuka. But one of my favorite female wrestlers is Asuka. Io Shirai is right there because she's crazy. She's really crazy. She does the craziest moves. And I don't want her to go on the main roster because I know that they'll definitely destroy her, truthfully. She'll get the dumbest gimmick ever. She'll be involved with like Retribution or something stupid like that. Favorite tag team... Well, my favorite tag team was the New Day. Just because not only were they were funny and everything like that, but they were able to like really be James Ellsworth. Okay. Yeah, I knew it was somebody. I forgot who it was that he did the Styles Clash on, but yeah, James Ellsworth went to bend his head to, I guess when he was upside down, he wanted to be right side up or something like that. But he went to, bend his head, and AJ Styles like adjusted the Styles Clash like midair, and like saved James' life. But my favorite tag team of all time, maybe, I would say the Dudleys. I love the Dudleys. Current tag team, though, it was back when it was DIY, but now it's a little tough because they broke up a lot of tag teams. But I have to say, when Jimmy comes back, it will be the Usos. The Usos, who doesn't love their theme music and the way that they get down? As far as like my favorite storyline from wrestling, was the Higher Power storyline. Everybody sees the gif of it when Vince McMahon puts up the hood and reveals that he was the Higher Power. But that whole storyline with the Ministry of Darkness to the corporation, and then the the Ministry Corporation, whatever it was, and then they had the Higher Power. The reason why the Undertaker went after Vince McMahon from the get-go, it was all for Stone Cold Steve Austin. I love that storyline. That storyline had me at the edge of my seat. I didn't even guess that it was Vince McMahon, because they did the little trick where they showed Vince McMahon on the screen, And he mentioned, I'm not coming out there. I want to see who the son of the bitch is. And Vince McMahon, when he flipped up the hood, it was Vince McMahon. And you heard when he said, "It's me, Austin." And JR was like, "Oh, son of a bitch." And Vince McMahon goes, "It's me, Austin. It's been me all along." And then it led to the division of the McMahon family, because then Stephanie McMahon was like, "How can you do this to me?" And you had Vince McMahon and Shane versus Stephanie McMahon and Linda McMahon. And they decided to sell their shares to get Stone Cold as part of the, he was in charge of WWE. He was like 50% owner versus Vince and Shane. And then Stone Cold like went to like the headquarters, stuff like that. And that whole vignette was funny because he went up to a receptionist and he was like, "No, you don't answer the phone like that. You pick up the phone and you're like, what the hell do you want? Who the hell is this? What the hell do you want?" And she went and did that. So that was my favorite storyline as well. So if you see behind me, I had mentioned on when I was doing the tribute for Brody Lee, and I am wearing the Brody Lee Exalted in Heaven shirt that they made, and proceeds from this shirt had went to his family, and I went and got one, of course. But when I was watching the tribute show, I was crying, and I mentioned during one of the tribute show on the podcast that my son had saw me crying, and he decided to draw me a picture, and I had posted it on Twitter, but I wanted you to guys see it because I have it sitting right here. But this is the picture that he drew, and he's only 10 years old, and so he looked at he had a picture of Brody Lee up on his tablet, and he went and drew that picture for me. So I have it over here. I have my little shrine as well. Some of my video games, Batman, who I'm a big fan of. I'm a big fan of Batman. I wasn't really a big Marvel person growing up. Of course, I knew like Spider-Man and stuff like Spider-Man and X-Men for watching the cartoons growing up. But now that we got this MCU, the MCU has started coming out, I'm like, movie-wise, I'm a big fan of Marvel. I haven't watched like the TV shows that they put out, along with the Marvel universe. But DC needs to really get it together with their movies, because Marvel is just blowing it out the water. I mean, it's all connected and everything like that. And now I'm watching WandaVision, and I'm like, whoa, because I have Disney Plus, and WandaVision is like really good as well. But wow. It's episode 100. We did a review of the Elimination Chamber. I did the Ask Me Anything. And that's it for the Wrestlebread podcast. Thank you so much for being with me these past 100 episodes. I hit a milestone probably like a month or two ago. I had 500 listens from my episodes, which is like crazy. I was sitting here like, is it a bot that's listening to the episodes over and over again? But I know there are actual humans out there. Don't stop listening because I said that. Keep on listening. Let me know what it is you want to hear next. I don't know what I'm going to do for WrestleMania. I might, do another like recap or something like that, because I love going back and watching the old WrestleManias. Thank you guys on the congratulations. Thank you to all the podcasts who's been there with me, especially since episode 1. Before I started the podcast, I was on Julian's podcast on the Wrestling Court, and I was basically like a feature there. The Wrestlebread actually used to be the Kick Out show. I started like this YouTube vid channel, and I would like put edits of things from wrestling shows together. It was sort of like Botchamania. But I like made it like little snippets, and it's still there. I might add it to this channel so you can check out those type of episodes. But those episodes, it took me so long to put it together. It was like a weekly thing, but like the editing and everything, and I was like going to college and stuff at the time, and it just took so long. And I always had the thought of starting a podcast. And funny story, so I always had the thought of starting a podcast, but I was like, I don't know, I'm going to start a podcast, things like that. And the Hubs went and paid a cameo for Ryback. And Ryback actually was like, yeah, he was, I give Ryback props. he actually went above and beyond what was asked. He was just, saying, hey, like the hubs asked right back, like, hey, my wife's thinking about starting a podcast, things like that. Can you give her advice? And, normally like Cameo is like very short. He like spoke for like maybe 2 or 3 minutes. It's like, hey, you should start a podcast, things like that. He offered to be on the show, which wasn't going to have him on the show, unfortunately. But he was like, you should do a podcast, things like that. And I thought about it, and I created the Twitter for Russell. I was trying to come up with a name. If you wonder like where the hell the name Wrestlebread came from, there were a lot of names out there. Like, I didn't realize how many damn podcasts are out there, inactive and active. And I came up with a lot of different names. I wanted to tie it to like Ultimate Warrior, since he was the one him and Macho Man was the one who got me involved in wrestling. So I had like Shake the Ropes. I had like a list of all the podcast names I had. And I would sit there and Google the names to see if like, if this podcast had it. And there was a few names, podcast names I was like in love with. And I know one of them, it was like a podcast in like the UK or something like that. And I was like, well, maybe I can still do it because I'm in the United States. But I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. So I just kind of like came up with like, I came up with Wrestlebread. Of course, I wanted to put the word wrestle in it so people knew right away what the heck it was about. But I said bread because the reason why I wanted to start the podcast was to kind of like share these moments with people. To kind of, for someone to listen and, for me to like, we're going through this journey together with wrestling. We all love wrestling, whether you love it 100% or you like it 50%, or if you like it 1%, but you actually love it 100%. We're all going through this journey together with wrestling, and wrestling takes us through a lot of ups and downs. And I wanted to be able to like share my thoughts and share my opinion and like talk about like the, things that I had loved when I watched wrestling in the past, comparisons between them and now, reviewing past past like pay-per-views and stuff like that. And I felt as though it's like, it's like bringing people to a table, sharing food, and it's like sharing bread. And I kind of like thought of the saying of like breaking bread, breaking bread with people and, giving them something that they can just like be able to, I don't know, I'm getting weird here, but I'm being able to digest. I don't know, not really getting good with my words right now, but I thought of bread part just to, as far as like sharing how I feel, sharing my love for wrestling with people who also have a love for wrestling. Because, we don't get paid for this. A lot of these things, the WWE Network and setting up Mixler and stuff like that comes out the pocket. We don't get paid for this. WWE is never going to call us to be featured in one of these documentaries on the WWE Network. No one's going to ask Jaydee, hey, what is your thoughts of AJ Styles when he came to the Royal Rumble? No one's going to talk about that. I am that crazy enough. Yes, Keita, it is your job. You said that. First of all, I'm not doing a month of takeovers. I'll do an episode of a takeover because it is a job. We are spending not only hours of watching wrestling, watching pay-per-views, but we're reading up on news, we're getting reactions, we're following, wrestlers' Twitters and stuff like that. And it's a job, and I have a 9-to-5 job already. And so I'm not doing this for free. I'm doing this because I actually like doing it. I like talking about wrestling. I'm crazy enough to have, Cesaro lose every week for Asuka to not even be on TV, and I'll still tune in to watch the next day because that's how much I actually like wrestling. And I'll watch AEW, when it comes out live, and then catch NXT, the 2 hours NXT the next morning. AEW's talking about putting out another show, and I'm sitting here like, I don't know if I can do another show. Then NXT talking about doing a second show, and I'm like, guys, there are 7 days out of the week. I remembered, I think it was the week of WrestleMania. There was Raw, then there was something, no, it was NXT, and then there was something on Thursday, and then Friday was the Hall of Fame, And then Saturday was TakeOver, and then Sunday was WrestleMania, and then Monday was Raw, and then back then Smackdown was on Tuesday. I remember I was watching wrestling for like 5 days straight. And there are times where, we treat WrestleMania like it's the Super Bowl. Normally on WrestleMania day, I have on WrestleMania. I'm either watching like favorite matches from WrestleMania or something like that. But it's a job, and I'm doing this because I actually like it. I'm not trying to get anything out of it. Will I do the ads or something like that later on down the line? Yeah, more likely, just so I can at least get a little bit of ad revenue back, so this kind of pays for itself. But no, a lot of us do it because we actually like it. We like talking about wrestling. We like interacting with people about wrestling. I can talk for a straight hour about why Edge versus Roman Reigns kind of works versus Edge versus Drew McIntyre. I can talk for hours about why Goldberg is the worst choice to win the title with. I can analyze the differences between wrestlers and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a job, and I like doing it. Watching wrestling has been a passion of mine. I've been a fan ever since I was 8 years old. The only time I really didn't really watch wrestling like that was when I was when I actually, a little bit after the Ruthless Aggression, a little bit during the Ruthless Aggression, I still kept up with it, but that was the time I was technically adult, and I would sit there and get clowned for watching wrestling, so I didn't really watch it like that, and I was with the wrong person anyway, because they clowned me for watching wrestling, so I kind of wasn't really into it that much, but I still kept up with it. But yeah, awesome. Yes, I'll do a takeover episode, Kita, but doing a whole month, that's going to be a lot. But I really appreciated what you guys said about the podcast during your episode. I really appreciate it. It's a lot as solo podcaster, but we'll see what the next 100 episodes are going to be. But that's it for the Wrestlebread podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for listening these past 100 episodes. Be sure to catch me on Twitter at Jaydee Talks. That's Jayde Talks. You follow the podcast as well. The podcast is on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube. You can catch this stream live. Well, you catch it live, but you can catch the audio versions of the podcast on YouTube as well. I am live on Mixler every Thursday at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I know there's a lot of people out there all over the world who listens as well. And I normally talk about, I do recaps of Raw, Smackdown, NXT, AEW. I also do predictions for, whatever pay-per-view is coming up, and reviews of the pay-per-view as well. The only promotion I don't really cover as much is Impact. I did try to cover Impact at one point, but it was just too much, so I couldn't do it. I don't watch enough New Japan to really talk about it. I knew when Kenny Omega and the Bullet Club was over there, but I don't really know too many people who is over there now, so I can't really cover it like that. I'm also on TikTok, but if you go to TikTok, it's very sad. I probably have 4 videos on there, but now that I got this little ring light, maybe I'll do a lot more. My son teased me when he saw the ring light, so he was like, "Oh, Mom, you gonna do TikToks?" And I was like, I don't know about that. I'm the millennial who scrolls through it and hits likes. I'm not the one who actually films it. So keep an eye out. Maybe I'll start doing the TikToks. But yeah, shout out to all the podcasts who've been supporting me these past 100 episodes. Julian Robb from the Wrestling Court podcast, Kita and Jay from the Kita and Jay show, Chris, who is on the We Talk Next, which is on the Kita and Jay show, Clark Street Wrestling as well. My boys over at Half K Podcast as well, and all the new podcasts who I've also been interacting with, Straight Talk Wrestling, the mini host on there. I love her. She is the future of podcasting. I hope she continues. She is so good. Definitely check them out on YouTube as well. Also Dirty Heels as well, I started listening to. They're really funny over there as well. And I'm trying to, listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to podcasts while I'm at work. So I'm like 2 days behind whenever an episode come out. But, it is what it is. But let me know your thoughts. Let me know your reviews. And thank you so much for 100 episodes. And until next time, guys, peace.